looks like this. Still a little underexposed. I try it again. I try it again at 5,000, and suddenly I'm finally touching that midpoint. You got it. That's what you've got. So remember that your goal is to first off have a separation between these two humps. If it's all one big hump, the problem is that you've got all these blacks mixing in with everything, and there's not a lot of highlights or lights or midtones to separate them, and your image will be flat and underexposed. You won't have a lot of contrast to deal with. So have this separation. Make sure that separation exists. If this is really tight, but it has a separation, you can feel happy about that. That's okay. Just make sure you have the separation. The other thing is, make sure that whatever this hump looks like, that it touches this point. Overlaps it a little bit, even just goes right up against it. Either one's fine. Just make sure that it touches the midpoint. Then you know you've got something completely exposed. So that first part of the spike, the black, that's your foreground. That's the darkness of the foreground. The next hump that you want to be separate from the foreground is your sky. That's your sky and Milky Way. So when you have the second mountain, think of that one as exposing your Milky Way. So when this mountain is really far to the left, it's underexposed. When this mountain is close to the middle, it's exposed properly and nicely. If you have your foreground spike touching the second hump, that touching, like they're all just smudged together, you're way severely underexposed. But if you have the first spike, a separation, and that second mountain is shaped very nicely, separate from it, there's that gap, and it's touching the middle, then you've got a Milky Way section of your exposure, nicely exposed, and it looks fantastic. Let me show you some examples. So in here, I have a ton of raw images from the shots that you've already seen, and it'll give you an example of the different histograms and ISOs that I chose in order to get to those histograms. So let's just start off with the first one. In this image right here, let's go to its history. So at raw, what's its histogram doing up here? Man, okay, this has an up and it's separated from each other. It's a little overexposed on these colors. And so then you look at here in the middle, it's not getting towards the middle at all. It's still bunched up against the left. This histogram's pretty nice. It has a separation, but it's a little under. It's not reaching the middle. Remember the example of the silo next? Here's the image of the silo raw. Well, you can see the difference between this one. I have 30 seconds, ISO 2000. This same night, same camera lens, same everything, I had 20 seconds and I was at 5,000. So this particular image of the silo was shot with only 20 seconds. So between these two, the differences of 30 seconds and 20 seconds, the image I showed you before was a silo shot that has 30 seconds. This one's only 20 seconds, and you can see how it's a little underexposed, but it's probably there. Look at where it's at. You can see in this image that right here it has very little blacks. Is it bad? You don't have to have blacks. The entire foreground has some color, has some midtones to it, so there's not a lot of blacks. This right here is not being light painted for the shot. This is just the sky shot, just the sky. And you can see how there's very little black things in here. It's just dark shadowy tones, not black. Even though there's not a huge black section because there's nothing really in here, there's not a lot of foreground, that's okay. The key thing is that we have that separation between this hump and this hump. We got it, and this hump even stretches out towards the middle, so this is a more properly exposed Milky Way right here, but it can get even better. Let's look at this shot. Is this shot properly exposed? This one is severely underexposed. Look at this guy. You've got very little black. Well, you got all completely black. Look at those. Look at that area. All completely black and clipping. Now, what's happening here is that I've gone in and I have painted out all of this because it wasn't important. I wanted it all black so that I could use just the sky and mask it in a composite in Photoshop. And so that's why this has what looks like brush strokes even, because I painted black all over that. So this foreground is completely black and there's a separation, but the important part is that this Milky Way is way severely underexposed. It almost reaches there, but that hump is way early and cuts off early before it comes down here. You want it to spread out towards it a lot more. Let's see if another shot turned out better. So here's that shot of the train trestle. It's 17 seconds, f2.8 at ISO 4000 now. 4000. Now what's happening with our shot? If you look at it in this way, it's unsynchronized the settings. So the raw right before anything. You can see that this is not getting exposed fully. This is not reaching the middle. It's even completely blowing out on this midtone because I've been light painting. So one of the things that's going to change the way your histogram is shaped or whether it's clipping is based on whether you're light painting or not. Let me show you an example of no light paint whatsoever. This is 13 seconds, f2.8, and now look at the stars. These stars, not bad. Then there's these stars. Look at the difference. The difference is incredible. You have so many stars up here that weren't showing up before. We have big black silhouettes of the terrain. This is part of a panorama that I took. And so you can see that I've got a big old black spike of the foreground. I have a gap, and it's almost a perfect histogram going all the way down here. So look, I did it. 13 seconds. The stars aren't trailing all that bad. Oh, no, I don't. So now let's talk about the histogram that was so hard for me to not mention with the ISO and the histogram all in the shutter discussion. I had a hard time not bringing it up because it is really the most important thing. Now, I mentioned that shutter is the most important thing for you to worry about because you're going to have to choose. Which one do I like? Do I like this shutter? Do I like that shutter? You're also going to make the call based on your aperture, just based on your lens. That call is going to be made for you. Go as wide as you possibly can. So now this part is easy. It's gonna seem confusing when you're out there and you're doing it and you're thinking, okay, I think I've got the right histogram. Hopefully my examples here are gonna clear all of that up for you and at least give you the idea that, okay, I don't have to worry too much. I just need to make sure that it looks somewhat like this and I'm good to go. So the histogram is going to tell you if you have a properly exposed Milky Way, and I'm going to try and make this as simple for you as possible. So look at this picture that I've drawn up of a typical histogram. This is a luminance histogram. If you're seeing colors on your histogram and separations of the colors, make sure you change your camera settings to do just a luminance histogram. This is what you want to see. And this part right here that you're seeing the information for, that's all the blacks. You know what? Let's just back up. If you're completely new to a histogram, understand that here are the blacks towards the midtones, towards the lighter tones. So every image's luminance map shows that over here, all of the light colors will show up, anything that's in the mid colors will show up, and anything that's really, really black will show up. So if I get rid of all this stuff and you see a histogram like this one, what it's saying is here's a big, tall peak of black. Also, on the histogram, how high up it goes is telling you how much of it there is. If it's a color that is a gradient that spreads from midtone all the way to the lights, it's going to be wider. If it's something that's very white, very midtone, very black, lots and lots and lots of it, imagine this way. So you have a snowball in your image. It's black, but you have a snowball in your image. You're going to see a lot of black way up here with black, and then you're going to see a snowball right here, you know, a white section showing there's some white. You have 3 snowballs. You have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's like that. There's more white in the image, it will go up higher. If there's less white in the image, it will be down. If there's 0 white in the image, like almost this shot, there won't be anything over here in the lights. And so when you look at this shot right here, this is a shot of certain things in a Milky Way image. So right here, this section is showing you that, man, there's some major solid darks. And all those darks are most likely dark purples, dark blues, and blacks. Dark foreground, dark shadows, dark stuff, because you're shooting at night. And so for the most part, this is telling you about the foreground, the FG. Welcome in, everybody. Hey, hey. Oh, look at that. My screen is completely tiny. Now, behind the scenes, what you're not seeing is Royce Bair hanging out with us right now. We're going live. I'm Aaron King with Photog Adventures. Welcome in. Like many of you have already experienced, you've been a part of one of my live streams. You know how to make sure you get my attention with the chat. For instance, right up here in the chat window, it looks like you need to go through and type in something. You want to interject with the question. You want to ask me or Royce a question. Make sure you hit me up with an all caps question over here. And you know, I'm really not certain why this is changing size. I think it's to do with something unrelated, but hopefully, since we'll be on the Zoom call most this time, that won't be a factor. So the beard is back. Yes, I showed a video just barely of me teaching about histograms, and so that was an older video from 2017. No beard, Aaron King, and I will probably be trimmed a lot more here soon. But let's go ahead and talk about the man of the hour. We have an awesome guy who I call him the grand master or guru of Milky Way photography, and he literally is the one who started all of it. He coined the phrase nightscapes. He went through and created images that got all of us stoked about using these cameras and making sure we can catch what he's catching. And then he has developed a passion in the community that has grown well beyond everything that you, me here do with star tracking, star stacking. You've got all sorts of techniques that are coming into play, and Royce is going to share with us something that he does in his post-processing that we're all frankly crazy lucky to be here for. So it's cool to see everyone coming in and talking about where they're from. We got Yakima, Washington. We've got people who I know like Hudson, who's in Arizona. Terry down in... Are you in Tennessee, Terry? I can't remember right now, man. But everyone's here. Let's get going. Let's bring in the man of the hour. I have with me Royce Bair, the creator of Nightscapes, the man of, well, Nightscaper convention every year, and frankly, we'll be naming everything. Like down here in Utah that doesn't have a name, I'll be naming it Royce Bair Milky Way Butte, Royce Bair Milky Way Arch, everything I possibly can in about 50 years when he finally moves on and passes away. But for now, let's celebrate the man who's alive and bring in Royce Bair. So I'm switching over to you now, Royce. Hey, how's it going?
I'm still alive.
I'm still...
Just barely. Yeah, I'm here. Thanks, Aaron.
You're
Good
welcome.
to see everybody.
Hey, it's awesome to have you here. We are fortunate. Those who don't know, Royce always, is it safe to say always, Royce, that you will capture your image, whether it's a single image or you had 2 exposures to make it happen, that you will almost, or if always, capture the image, separate the sky from the foreground? Do you ever not do that?
Most of the time I do separate the sky from the foreground in post-processing. You know, even though I'm into doing single exposures a lot, as much as I can, and some blends and some low-level lighting so that I don't have to do that second longer exposure to blend in, I still separate the sky. And that's, we're going to show an image here a little later on about that, and we'll discuss some of the various things. But yeah, you're right.
Awesome. Well, then every time you do it, I don't come into that. I haven't been doing that myself every time, and I'm learning more and more, especially going into star tracking, that the skill set's needed. The skill set is absolutely required. And I just saw Mary Beth's comment about you. She says, the man, the myth, the legend, Royce Bair.
Oh, man, I'm just overwhelmed, Mary Beth.
And so I got one request to bring your mic up even more. I know that my mic is definitely louder. So if I bring my mic down a little bit and kind of equalize each of us so that when you bring up your YouTube channel, your phone, whatever you're watching from, you'll be able to hear Royce nice and loud. So I'm going to just maximize you a little bit more and then bring us both up a little bit more. So check that. Go ahead and say something.
Testing 1, 2, 3. This is Royce. How are we coming in, Aaron?
Let's see how that works. Everyone's going to take about 20 seconds to know that we asked that question. So let me give you another thing to answer. When you are capturing something and you are not going to do a different exposure and you're just going to bring a single image together in post, do you change anything in your capture knowing that you're going to separate the sky?
I don't. I just try to keep it as simple as possible. It is in post that I play with the foreground and the background.
All right. So it looks like we have still a problem. Let's go ahead and risk a little bit of your gain issue on your mic. Go ahead and pump it up a little bit. Let's make sure that this is coming through. There's no difference according to Cheryl right now. Christian says just a little more volume on Royce. So let's just see how that goes.
Okay, testing one, two, three. Testing one, two, three. How are we coming in?
I have one more emergency method that I could possibly do. Let's see how this goes. I'm going to try this, guys. I've disconnected Royce entirely, and I'm going to plug him in on a different source. And let's see how that goes. Say something, Royce.
Testing one, two, three.
Oh,
Testing one, two, three.
you're brilliant now. I mean, on my end, it's very loud. Hopefully, that's the
Okay.
agreement.
Should we turn down the gain just a little bit?
Yeah,
I'm
go
taking
ahead
it
and-
down just a notch. Testing one, two, three. Testing one, two, three. How are we sounding now, everybody?
I think it's going to come through as solid because you are blasting through on my ears. Hopefully, it will come through on theirs. We just have to wait that 15 to 30-second delay. Mozam says better, all caps. And let's see if we get 2 or 3 votes for the same. And I am stoked to see 64 people plus hanging out with us and watching tonight. I didn't get a chance to mention it yet, but if you're not already coming to the Nightscaper conference, make sure you just type in Google Royce Bair Nightscaper. We'll put links in the description at the end of this where you can watch the replay and see the link. But just Google it right now. Nightscaper, Royce Bair, even just Nightscaper, you will find the conference that's coming up in May. And to get you ready for that conference, whether you're joining us virtually or joining us physically in person, which I guess is a wait list right now. So no more chance for physical, Royce?
Not unless things change on the COVID environment. Right now, they're restricting us to 150 plus 40 speakers and staff.
Yikes. Okay. Well, let's hope. Maybe it could allow us. I mean, between now and May, a lot of changes are happening. A lot of people are getting vaccinated. I wouldn't be surprised if Utah at least opened up at some of its restrictions.
But we have unlimited tickets for virtual, and that's going to be pretty cool. We've got a $30,000 video production team doing this. You know, you don't want me doing this technical stuff.
Or me. It's much better coming from these guys, and they have a crazy name. What was the name of that?
Mustache Power Productions.
Mustache Power. The Mustache Power. The beard has more power than the mustache. I'll have to contend with that.
They're a pretty cool group, and you're gonna get a lot for your virtual money.
So if you guys want to join us,
it'll be like hanging out virtually, and there'll be roundtable discussions and all that kind of stuff.
You really won't miss out on anything except you get to come in your pajamas, and so it's one of the best ways to take it in. It's like going to going to a football game in person. It's a cool experience, but you have a better camera angle at home at your big screen TV.
Exactly.
Oh, good.
And then you get up to a year in the cloud of all the speakers and the roundtable discussions, to review things.
Oh, man, it's got so much coming, too. So if you are wanting to join us there, make sure you sign up, as well as get ready for your Milky Way this year, and look up Royce Bair's ebook. I will have a link on here. I included it in the email that I sent to all of you, so you have that link and the Nightscaper link already there, but you can go and just Google it, Royce Bair Milky Way ebooks. I guess you called it Nightscapes? What was the full title of your book?
Milky Way Nightscapes.
That's it. Milky Way Nightscapes. Well, you guys are. I'm stoked to hear that the mic is all solid. Everything's good. Alan convinced is also voted much better. Perfecto from Bob. Merrill says it's a good balance between both of us. Well, there won't be much of a balance between both of us going forward because now we're gonna sit and learn at the feet of the guru. And so, Royce, if you're ready, let's get going through some of this work that you're gonna take us through and teach us everything that you can.
Good. Is my screen online? Is it being shared?
Technically, yes, but I just have to turn us off and it on. Oh, that's hidden behind the black. Okay, let me move this display capture above my black screen, and now we've got the full window where you can see you on the right and everything else on the left with your Photoshop showing, and right there, your namesake, Royce Bair Milky Way Butte.
Okay. Well, this is a butte. I call Thumb Butte, but Aaron calls it Royce Bair Milky Way Butte.
It's a better
It's
name.
okay. It's in the Utah Badlands, central Utah. It's near Hanksville. This is a raw image. Okay, you can see that I've done, it's about a 15-second exposure with 24 millimeter lens. You can see it. I've done low level lighting for the foreground. And so basically all we have to do is enhance that sky. If we select the whole thing, if I do Command A, select the whole thing, and let's pop up something here at curves, and let's do the whole shebang. And so let's make the Milky Way look pretty darn awesome. Okay. Ooh, and then we'll take a little bit of the orange out of it. I'll go into the red channel and take a little bit of the orange out of it. I mean the red. So looks cool, but we lost all the detail in our foreground, right? I mean, it's real contrasty. The foreground is just as contrasty as the sky. So we're not going to do that. Okay. So we'll go back to our image. And what we're going to do is select the sky. We're going to use the magic wand tool. I'm going to take the sampling size. By the way, these images are all 1/2 their normal size so that they'll process real fast. I'm going to do a sampling of 33 pixels average. I'm going to do a tolerance of about 20. That's usually where I start. I'm going to click. Okay, what's going, oh, I got my caps on. I'm going to click here on the image, and as you can see, it selected about 90%. Okay, I can hold down the shift key, click up here in the corner, get more of it. I'm going to go down and make my sampling size about 3 by 3, take my tolerance down to about 5 or 10, hold down the shift key, click down here where it hasn't been selected, click some more. It's not grabbing enough, so I'm going to go to a tolerance level of 10, hold down the shift key, click, click, okay? And we'll enlarge this image so that you can see it a little better. And as you can see, most of the sky has been captured. There's a little place down here that didn't get captured, but also some of our thumb got captured. So we're going to go back to a tolerance of 5. I'm going to enlarge this a little bit more, up to 200%. And I'm going to hold down the Option key, which I believe would be alternate on the PC. I'm going to click right here. See, we're subtracting from, see that minus sign? We're subtracting from the selection. I'm going to click right there, click right here, click right there. And as you can see, everything looks good, except there's one little place right here. Okay, so we've pretty much selected the sky. I'm going to go down to full screen. We've selected the sky all except for a lot of big stars. So we're going to grab those stars by a technique by expanding the selection. We're going to click on Selection, Modify, Expand, and we're going to expand that selection by about 4 pixels. Okay, and hit OK. Watch what happens to the stars. Here we go. The stars got ate up. We expanded that selection. Okay, but here's the problem. If we enlarge, you can see that we've also pushed the sky selection into the land. Well, there's a simple problem by 4 pixels. There's a simple solution to that. Go to Select, Modify, Contract, 4 pixels. we're right back where we should be.
Whoa, that's easy.
Okay,
I like that.
this is all described in my ebook. It took me a couple of years to figure all this out, but
It's the best money you'll
okay,
spend if
now
you haven't spent
go
it yet.
ahead,
I can't
Aaron.
I can't emphasize it enough that it's a terrific buy to get the ebook. It is so much more money worth than it is being sold for. So grab it now before Royce comes to his senses and goes for a higher price. So just go get it today. Now that he knows we're pushing it and the conference is coming up, I'd say get it right now, right away, because this is a fantastic book. It's full of information on the processes, and then he has pages upon pages of just all of his work in Photoshop. So if you're not really skilled with the Photoshop side of editing in Milky Way yet, get Royce's book.
Photoshop is has kind of a little bit of a rough, steep learning curve. It's a little bit harder than Lightroom, but it's like working with a small brush rather than a big brush. You can really do some cool detail things. So now we're going to save this selection as a masking or alpha channel. We go to Select, Save Selection, and we get to choose a name. We'll call this Ground or something like that, okay?
Bill
And
Higgins.
go
Bill
ahead.
Higgins has said Royce's ebook is awesome. So there's a second witness right there. David Jones
Well,
just said
thank
thank
you.
you so much.
And then
How this book has changed it for him. Oh, and Royce, David pointed out that he actually has received your updates ever since you first published it. And so not only do you get the book as is, but when Royce adds stuff to it, you get it.
yeah, if you register the ebook, then I give you updates for free. And we're going to be having some ebooks near the end of this year that I think you'll really enjoy.
Sweet.
Okay, I'm just going to hit cancel because I've already done that, as you'll see. Now, you don't have to, but I'm also, by the way, this is not, I just made a mistake here. This is not, I wouldn't save that as ground. I would save it as the sky, right?
Oh, right.
I'd
Yeah.
use the heavens. Excuse me. So,
No worries.
so if you want to have the ground, then just go to Select, Inverse. And as you can see, it inverse to the ground, and then you save that selection as well. Now, I'm going to deselect that. And if I go to Channels over here, you can see that I've already saved the sky. Click on that. There's the sky selection. That's the white selection. And there's the land selection or the ground. Okay. Go back up here to RGB. I'm going to go back over to layers. Now I'm going to load up that sky selection. I go to sky, load selection, and there it is. I hit sky and it comes up. Okay. Now this is where the magic begins. Sometimes you think it's a pain in the neck to make these selections, these alpha channels, but let me tell you, there's a lot of good that can be done. Okay, we go to layer, new adjustment layer, and then I use curves rather than levels because it can do so much more. It's so much more powerful. And I'm going to call it curves 3. As you can see, I've already done a bunch of things over here, but I want you to be able to see how I did that. Okay, this little histogram here is a histogram of the sky, okay? It doesn't include any of this ground part down here. So we see this histogram, that's the sky in the Milky Way. We're going to increase the contrast of that. We go about halfway in the middle here, and we bring it up like that and lighten it. We go about halfway over to the left, the dark side, and pull it down, okay? And then we're going to bring it over here, and then we're going to take this and adjust it. The key here is to not let it pancake or flatten up at the top, because anytime you pancake like I'm doing here, there's going to be no information in those highlights. So you want that curve to come in gently. See how that just barely arcs and touches? That is perfect. And then you can grab this dark side one, and bring it over here to make it even richer if you want. Now that caused some pancaking, so we just drop that down until it arcs in, because you don't want to lose those delicate highlights. In other words, if you wanted to burn this core area back in, you can still do it because you haven't lost that area. But if you use levels or you pancake, you're going to, it's going to be bad.
And by pancaking, you mean that you brought that curve to be a flat line on one side?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, anytime you flat. Now we flat line down here at the bottom because black is black, you know.
No matter what,
and
right?
There's nothing there. But here there is, even though it shows that there's nothing here, there are stars that will get lost. Okay.
Right
so
on.
Sometimes I don't, I curve that bottom as well. Okay. But notice that all we're doing here does nothing to the foreground material. Okay, now we're going to change the color. We go into RGB. This is mainly a lot of yellow and red. We're going to take some of that yellow out. We're going to take some of that red out, which takes it to the cyan level. Okay. So there's just a kind of a rough one. And we're going to click right here. Look at the difference that's made already, right? Okay, now this area to the left, kind of down here, remember the core, this was shot in November, by the way. So the core is clear down here below the base of the thumb. And that's why we're getting all this glow right here. And we're also getting a little glow because there's a city of Caneville over here. It's not a very big city. It has probably 30 residents. So I don't call that a big city, but it does have some light pollution. So this is where we can do some additional magic with this mask. I'm going to click on the lasso. First of all, I'm going to go over here to the background. So I'm working on the whole image. And I'm going to go over to the lasso. And I'm going to circle this area right here. I don't want to, I could go all the way down here, but I don't want to, because this corner is already pretty dark. Let me do that again. So I'm going to go here. Boy, I'm not as steady with my hand as I used to be. I must be getting old.
That's twice we mentioned your age. I apologize for ever starting it. I said 50 years from now you were going to pass away. That's not old age.
Yeah, funny. Okay, that wasn't a very good loop. But anyway, I'm going in here and grabbing that. Now, if this was a full-size image, I'd probably do about 300, a feather about 300 pixels. But since the image is about half that size, I'm going to do 200 pixels. You can look over here on the left, and you can see from there to there is 100 pixels. So I want an edge here of about 100 pixels there, 100 pixels there. So I'm going to do about 200 pixel feather. Hit OK. Okay. Now, if I did darkening and whatnot to this image and change the contrast, I would also get the land, right? So here's where it really becomes cool. I hit select, I do load selection, and I'm going to choose the land, and I'm going to subtract it from the selection. Watch what happens. Hit OK. Did you see what happened here?
Wow.
Okay, let me blow that up so that you can see that.
And the crowd rises in applause.
We've got a 200 pixel feather here all the way through here, and 0 pixel feather where it touches the land. Is that cool?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay, so that now we're going to do layer, new adjustment layer, curves, and it'll call it curves 4. So that's the histogram of that little area right there. Okay. We can just darken that area if we want. Okay. And, or we could do a curve to it as well. Can you see all that detail come in? Look at that. Okay. I'll hit the preview button. Look at that. Now you could sit there and dodge and burn and all that kind of stuff to get that, but it goes so quick. Okay. Now we're going to do another little technique. You may not know, but the sky goes more bluish magenta as you get higher. So we're going to help simulate that. And I'm going to take my tool, my lasso tool, and I'm just going to go around here like this and all the way up here. Okay, so I've selected an area that goes up here to the side and down and around. I'm actually going to add a little, I'm going to hold down the shift key and maybe add a little bit more. Okay. Now I'm going to put a 300 pixel feather into that. If it was on a big image, I'd use probably 450 pixels. Okay, so I've got that feathered. Now that 300 pixel feather can get down into the top of this thumb. So just to be on the safe side, we will do load selection, land, subtract. Even though you won't see anything, it's the feathered edge I don't want to pick up. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay, then I go over here to layer, new adjustment layer, curves. Oops, no, I don't want curves. I'm going to do new adjustment layer, color balance, and you'll see why. Okay, so I'm going to, the sky goes darker and more blue and purplish the higher up it gets. So we're going to go the tone from midtones, which is the default, to shadows. And I'm going to take this blue slider and just add about a few units of blue. And I'm going to, on the cyan layer, I'm going to add just a little bit of cyan. Okay. And we've only added just a small amount. Look at the difference.
Wow.
Okay. So there's our image. We've went from that to that to that to that. Okay. And let me tell you, it can take, once you get those masks done, it goes very quickly because, you know, the mask is the hard part. Okay, let's go to a new image.
That's fantastic. Is there anybody who wants to ask a question about this image before we move on? And we can go from there. But he is going to go through some of the similar steps again. One thing I like about this, Royce, is it celebrates Utah. We have no trees messing up at all with anything in this image. So the selection is easy. And I think most of the people watching have more struggles with trees than you, me, and Thomas that we run into. So hopefully you got a solution on how to solve trees.
Yeah, I think I might. Okay, I'm going to flatten this image and I'm going to do something to this image.
Cool. And as anyone comes up with a question, I might interject it so we can go back and forth. But as long as you have this in a tab next to it, that'd be great.
Okay. Does Saturn here bother you being right on the edge, tangent to the edge?
Depends on my mood. Most of the time, not, but I probably would have cropped it out in my image since nothing was happening down here. Nothing down here in the image was really hurting for making this exist, so I probably would have cropped it out.
Yeah, I don't want to crop the image out. I would just eliminate it. So I would either clone it out or use a healing tool just to take that out. Where it's right there on the edge, I mean, it's distracting because it's on a tangent.
Yeah.
So, um,
So the one of the questions that's coming in while you do that fix is Katie Larson asks, "Are you running noise reduction beforehand at all?"
uh, I ran it after I flatten the image, then I do noise reduction. So that the two last things I do after I've flattened the image. And by the way, I keep all those layers and save it. And that becomes a pretty big file, sometimes 3, 4, 500 megabytes. And then I save that in Photoshop in case I need to come back. And then I flatten the image and put an F after the number, a big capital F, so I know that's flattened. And at that time, I remember I still have my channels. See, I've flattened the image, but those channels are still there. I use that sky channel to denoise, and I use define 2, and there are other noise reduction things that you can use, and I do the sky different from the land. Usually you can get away with a lot more noise in the land because it's got texture in it. And so I'll do those separately. And then the last thing that I do is before I print or publish an image, that's where I do the sharpening. Never do any sharpening on your master image. That is a big no-no. You only do it on your output images for printing or for display. Okay?
Awesome. And Hudson says, "Do you ever use Lightroom?"
I do, mainly for organizing images, or if I want to do a whole bunch of things to a group of images, then I do.
Right on.
Lightroom presets are kind of cool, but they're doing kind of an average. You're averaging images, and it's also cool for using when you're doing things for time lapse, so that you can correct images, because you have to correct a whole bunch of images for time lapse. So it's a great way to do it. Okay, I'm gonna close this image out
Awesome.
because we have a lot more fun things to do.
Yes, and we're really grateful for your time on this, Royce. This has been a lot of great information already.
Yeah, we're probably going to go over the time, and you don't care, right?
None of us probably care. I don't think there's a single
Okay.
person here that is worried about that.
Okay. If I take this, I move this image over to the side a little bit so you can see the full image. I'm not going to do a lot of the things we just got through discussing. I'm just going to show you this image, and then we're going to do some other things to it. So this was an image taken while a quarter moon was still present. You can see that it's lit
Oh yeah.
these Navajo peaks. This is, by the way, Rainbow Bridge. And of course, the moon is silhouetting it right here, but the moon is hitting the sky, desaturating it, lowering the contrast, changing the color, but it's lit up these Navajo peaks quite nicely. Okay, so these were the things that I did to the image. Okay, similar to what we did on that other image, changing the color and then adding some blue back in here up near the top. Okay, so that was the final sky image. Now I'm going to pull up the foreground image. After the moon set, about an hour later, I took this shot and actually I've got 4 or 5 different shots that I've stacked together. So this shot was a stack of a whole bunch of 15-second exposures, stacked them together. and then I did the post-processing. And this shot, these are 2 and 3 and 4 minutes long. And then I've stacked these together manually in Photoshop. This image I stacked in Starry Landscape Stacker or Sequator, whichever you want to use. But this image, okay, I've waited for the moon to go down. So the only thing that is illuminating the ground here is this canopy of stars up above. That gives you a very flat lighting. As you can see, it's like being on an overcast day.
Yeah.
But it gives you detail of the foreground that you can't get any other way. Some people like to do blue hour shots in the twilight because there's a little bit of angular direction to the light rather than just this overhead canopy. So I've stacked several exposures here in order to reduce the noise. Okay. Now I'm going to pull up these 2 images and put them together. I go to Window, Arrange, Tile Vertically. Okay. So there are the 2 images. I'm going to reduce each one. Let me go back up. Okay. Unfortunately, if I slide this over so you can see the whole image, you won't be able to see my little layer panel here. So we're going to have to hide part of this image. I apologize for that. I thought we could move that over. My screen allows me to move this over, but the sharing mechanism for Zoom does not allow me to pick up my whole screen. It only allows me to see, for it to see a program. And this right here is not part of the program according to Zoom sharing. Okay, so I'm going to go over to this image, which I had already created the channels. And as you can see, there are the channels. I've got the sky, which we'd used. I've got the land, which was made by just inverting the sky. Okay. And I've chosen this channel view, and we're going to click on land. Okay. And so you can see that alpha channel, that mask. Okay. And we're working on this image right here on the left, but we're going to grab that icon for the land, and I'm going to drag it right over top of this foreground image and let go. And voila, it puts that channel into that foreground image. I go up here to RGB, click over on this one, go up to RGB. I'm going to go over to layers. I'm going to go back over to this image. And so I'm on this foreground image. I'm going to go to select, load selection, land. Can you see that it's selected the land, right? Okay. I'm going to go to edit, copy. I'm going to go over here to the sky version, and I'm going to go edit, paste. Voila.
Wow.
Okay. Go over here to the layer button, and you can see, wham, there it is. Now, there are some little problems here. Can you see this little bit of a halo?
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, that can be taken out quite easily, but I'm not going to go through that right now. But this, and then also, you know, this background here was quite a bit lighter. So in the final, I held back the mountains back there. But that's how it's done. And it's just as simple as can be, because you only have to create that channel once and you can share it with other images. You just don't kick your tripod.
Terry has responded in all caps, wow, exclamation mark. That is awesome. As well as a question from David saying, hey, when you say stacked, for the stars, how many exposures did you take?
Oh, thank you for asking. I typically do 12, 10 to 15. 12 to 14 is the best thing. I used to do only 5 to 7, but I did some experiments here about 2 years ago and found out that if I do about twice that many, it's significantly better. But once I get beyond about 14, the benefits don't. In other words, I could go 25 images and stack those, and I'd only get about 10% less noise. So that's what I do. Now on the foreground, you can stack 2 or 3 images and get a real big significant change. But on the sky, I usually find 12 to 14 is about where I need to be. What other questions do we have?
People might be writing them, but nothing has come through right now. But I want to emphasize that myself. The return of investment, like the return on investment of getting more images, it seems like somewhere between 10 and 20, and 14 is a good one to say. It just kind of ends up looking the exact same, whether you have 25 or you have 10. And so I definitely agree that if you go up to 10 to 14, that's about as much as you really need to get the benefits from that stack, especially when you're just trying to get noise reduction. If you're
Yeah.
trying to do something like a deep sky stack, that's a whole different world, and maybe 20, 30 could benefit you, but I can't speak for that.
Yeah. Let me
Go right on ahead, and I'm going to take over the screen for a second. Oh, you already got your stuff up? Okay, cool.
I just thought I'd show you the final
Ooh,
image.
I like that.
All cleaned up and pretty.
I see what you're saying. You fixed the haloing on the rocks. You've got that
Yep.
distant mountain back from the longer 2-minute, 3-minute exposure. So if you were to describe in 12 seconds what you do to get your halo off of the rocks, I know the process itself can take pretty heavy time and detail work, but what do you do?
You could enlarge the image just a little bit to get rid of that. But to me, the best way is just to bring up your mask and then with your cloning tool, you can just clone that rock right into where you're having the problem. In other words, you can expand the selection by maybe 1 pixel and then clone it. It's just really fast. You just take your cloning tool and run along the edge real quickly. And because you have the mask there, you don't have to be very accurate. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, because you take that star layer basically and you just kind of expand it over the bad spots by the rock.
I expand. I do a select on the foreground and make it 1 or 2 pixels larger, and then just clone from the rock just below that, and then just run across. And it's usually only when you're doing when you're doing a wide angle lens, it's usually over here and over here. It's rarely do you have a problem right in the middle.
Yep,
Okay.
amen. So Terry says, how are you finding that sweet spot for the foreground exposure? Like not too dark, not too light. It's just beautiful.
Well, thank you for asking. In my ebook, I say typically you want to go about 4 times longer than your sky exposure, and that's kind of a minimum. When you're using the starry canopy, let's say I was going 15 seconds. Okay, well, 4 times that is a whole minute. Okay. Well, I typically will stop down instead of doing F2. Let's say I was F2.8. We'll stop down to F4 and go 2 minutes, because then you get better depth of field and just sharper all the way around. So I went 2 minutes on most of these. Okay. And then just, because I stopped down one stop. So my basic exposure would be 4 times that of the sky, which in this case was 4 times 15 seconds, which would be 1 minute. And then I stopped down from f2.8 to f4 to get a little better depth of field and a little better crispness on the image, and which took me to 2 minutes. And then I shot 4 2-minute exposures and stacked them together to reduce noise.
It looks
Okay.
fantastic. I can't emphasize enough. I mean, I said that probably 7 times, I think, this entire live stream. I can't emphasize enough. Terry's right. It's beautiful. Wow. And last question, David Jones says, do you need any additional equipment other than camera to do more exposures? I mean, how much do the stars move in 20 exposures? And thank you.
Okay, the only equipment you need is an application afterwards. You can use an intervalometer to time these for you. An intervalometer, you can say, okay, give me 15-second exposure, and then do an interval of 2 seconds to wait for it to ride to the card, and then start another one, and just say, I want the number of exposures here to be 15. And voila, it'll do it for you. But I just use my regular remote release. I have a plain old remote release that has no intervalometer on it, and I just click that remote release shutter. I had the camera do the timing. With an intervalometer, you have the intervalometer do the timing. You set it on both and let the intervalometer do the timing. Where with a simple remote release, which only costs you about $15, it just has a push button and a lock button in case you want to do bulb. But I just push the button and I let the camera on manual time the exposure, which in this case was 15 seconds. And then as soon as that shutter closes, I push it again. Because the card, it's starting to write to the card right now. Sometimes I have to wait 1 second. And then I just keep those in my head. 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. But if you use an intervalometer, then you don't have to think.
I do like that.
Yeah. A few more questions. And then the stacking program for that is a program called Starry Landscape Stacker, and on the PC it's called Sequator. And what's cool about it is that as long as you do those exposures fairly rapidly, it'll follow the movement of the stars. It'll take the first star and take all the other stars and line it up with your first exposure. And now that causes a movement on the land, right? So it creates a mask automatically and then brings the land back in after it's stacked the sky stars.
Yeah. And
is that amazing?
It is. Both programs are fantastic for it too. I love both of them. A few more questions. I, for some reason, said last question, but I was wrong. There's a few more. And we got, let's see, I'm starting with Don Davis. On your stacks, are you changing your focus point or leaving focus alone?
Yeah, I always leave focus alone. In fact, even on my foregrounds, I never change. A lot of people will do focus stacking. I don't do much of that. With a 24 millimeter lens at f2.8, you go out to 22 feet. So 22 feet in front of you to infinity is in focus if you're focused on infinity. If you're using a 14 or 15 millimeter lens, you focus on infinity. Everything from 8.5 feet to infinity is in focus. So I don't move the focus around, okay? If I want more depth of field in the foreground, since I can go as long exposure as I want, I just stop down. So in this case, I went from f2.8 to f4. So sometimes I'll even go f5.6.
On the same vein of questions about what you change in between your stacking and doing the sky versus the foreground, SS Mold asks, do you leave the ISO the same when you change for exposures like this?
Oh, very good question. Many times, because I can shoot as long as I want, I'll drop, like for instance, in this shot, I'm shooting at ISO 8,000 for the sky. In fact, I think I went 13 seconds instead of 15 seconds, and I used an ice. And because I have a lens that doesn't look good until it's f2.8, I've got to go to an ISO of either 8,000 or 10,000. But the stacking gets rid of all the noise. But on the foreground, I can drop that ISO down to 3,200. So in this case, I actually went 4 minutes. So remember, I stopped down to f4, which my base exposure would have been 1 minute at f2.8. I decided to go f4 for 2 minutes instead of 1 minute. And then I drop the ISO down to 3,200 or 4,000, I think it was. And that meant that I had to go 4 minutes. Okay. And when you go this long, you've got to use long exposure noise reduction. So then that makes it actually 8 minutes because it goes for 4 minutes and then it does a dark exposure of another 4 minutes so it can compare the noise buildup. And then the computer erases the noise in the final image. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it sure does. And I think if it doesn't, many of you know you can watch this replay anytime and listen to it and put it into practice and understand the context of what Royce is saying. I want to emphasize, I put the text up on the screen so you can see what Thomas was saying. But he was talking about how Sequator Starry Landscape Stacker, they align the stars and create that single image of the stacked images and bring them back together. Then there's this question from Terry on somewhere down the road. Are you doing dark frames? And if so, how many?
Oh, good question. Dark frames are helpful in reducing some of the noise buildup that comes, especially dead pixels and things like that. So they like you to do about 50% dark frames at least. And guess what? I never do them. And I think it's a waste of time for what I get. I've tried it with dark frames, and I mean with a combination of light frames and dark frames, and it does help. And if I was real snurdly, and I would do more dark frames, but I don't.
If you're real snurdly, you would. The other question was, are you what camera body are you using? Harsh asks.
Sure. I have an old 5D Canon 5D Mark III that I use, and then I have an old Canon 6D that I've astro converted. When I say astro converted, I've changed it not to full spectrum, but to what is called H alpha. It's a very low modification. It gives you more nebulosity. With this image, I didn't use that. I think it's just the regular 5D Mark III. Now I have a 5D Mark IV that I bought for myself for Christmas, and I haven't even taken it out of the damn box yet.
Oh man, it's March. Oh,
man. And my wife keeps asking me, "You paid $1,700?" Well, honey, it was $3,500 originally. I got it at a recondition deal for only $1,700.
You got a sweet deal then.
Yeah.
Why won't she understand that you got a great deal?
Yeah, so I can wait as long as I want. Yeah.
Harsh, thanks for asking that question. We also have a question from Cheryl that we've answered also already, but I'll emphasize again, the replay will be available again. You guys can watch this anytime. Just use the same link that you got to get here, and you will know it. And yeah, Harsh says post-processing is key. It can definitely be key. So then the last question it looks like we have coming through is... Kim asked, this image is fantastic, she first says. She emphasizes how awesome it is, which I'm glad she does, because I like to do that myself. Emphasize how awesome you are, Royce. That is a great image. And then she says, did you start with a long exposure to check your composition before shooting your sky images, then shoot your land images?
Okay, well, that's a good question. Because you can go to like 12,800 or 25,600 on your ISO many times these days. I'll rack it up to 25,600 and do maybe a, you know, a 5 second exposure or even a 4 second exposure to quickly get my composition. You know, if you had a Sony A7S 3 or 4, you'd be able to go to 200,000 or 400,000 ISO and be able to actually see the image. But at 25,600, you still can't see the image on live view. You're looking through the viewfinder and you're just shooting over pointing your camera as a Canon and hoping for somewhat good composition. The key is to get that exposure and show it on your monitor on your as quickly as possible. So you jack that ISO up to a horrible ISO to get composition, move it, adjust it, shoot another one. Once you like your composition, make sure you go back to 6400 ISO or whatever you're normally shooting. Okay.
Awesome. Now, the last thing I wanted to emphasize to everyone who's part of this, many of you are here thanks to the fact that, let me just go quickly back to me, so I'm going to talk about this real fast. Looks like my image is weird again. Let me just fix that in the background before you see me. But I want to look deeply into your eyes as I say this next thing. Most of you are here thanks to being a part of the post-processing classes that I signed you up for with the Almanac. So you guys got the 2021 Almanac from me. Thank you so much for getting your hands on that. The other group are from MilkyWayPhotographersGuild.com. These are my guildies, the ones who like hanging out with me and talking Milky Way photography without all of the nonsense of Facebook groups. Facebook groups by themselves are amazing, but when you have all the distraction from every other group coming at you, the spam, the ads, the ex-girlfriends finding you and saying, I'm bored with my husband, I want to talk to you. You want to get away from all of that nonsense, and that's why I love the Guild. And so it's a basic ad-free hangout, a lot like a Facebook group where you share images, share feedback, and give tips as peers, and I'm there as well. And so if you guys want to see this replay easily found in these events that we do with the Guild, you can come and join us at MilkyWayPhotographersGuild.com. Now, behind the scene from me, what you're not seeing is that Royce has an image up now with trees. And so before you go, let's find out what Royce has to show us about with these trees, because this could be one piece of information that you guys will find priceless. And the emphasis... Yeah. Go ahead, Royce.
Okay, yeah, this is going to be quite interesting. I think most of you who have, you know, like Aaron said, when you're doing slick rock, sandstone, it's not too hard to make a mask, but look at these trees. Can you imagine separating the sky from these delicate fir trees? This is up in the high Uintas. This is a little camping thing. I took my 11-year-old, 10-year-old grandson camping up in the Uintas here year before last. Okay, so that's Mars. That star, that bright star, is actually Mars. And it was cloudy and smoky that night, so we didn't get a very good Milky Way. I'll show you my curves in my mask. So that's what I eventually changed it into, but I'm going to take that off. We're going to go act like we're doing a mask, creating a mask. Okay, so I hit 31 pixels square. I go to a tolerance of 20. I click on the sky with my tool. I hold down the shift key, click up here, click up here, click up here, click up here, click here. And then I'm going to use a little thing. I'm going to go to select and go to similar. So under select, I'm going to do similar because it's not getting around the trees too much. So I hit similar and it gets closer. I could go drop it down to 5 and go to about 9 and click here. Oops. Okay. And then we can do the, you know, where we grab the stars and all that kind of stuff. But here's what I want to show you. You're going to be all day doing this and trying to get in between the tree limbs. Can you see that?
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's just nearly impossible. Okay, so we're going to deselect, going to go back to the full image. And because we have a nice silhouette here, you don't have to always work with the sky. You can work with the land. If the land might be an easier thing to do, so go to your 31 average, go to about 20 for your tolerance, and let's click here in the silhouette in the land area. Wow, that did it pretty well, didn't it?
Interesting. Yeah.
Okay, so let's enlarge this. Wow, can you see that?
Yeah.
I mean, it's much better. Okay, and sometimes you can use similar to get better selection, but notice that when you do similar, it'll also pick up some of the dark corners of the sky. And in that case, use your lasso tool, hold down the option or Alt, and just deselect that area. Okay, but you notice that it didn't pick up the tent. Well, not a problem. Hold down the Shift key and just draw a circle around that tent. It's all part of the selection. Okay,
Kablamo.
then go select, save selection, and type in land. And then once you get that, inverse it and it'll become the sky. So for instance, we can click here, do inverse. We've now got a sky selection. We go select, save, type in sky and save it, blah, blah, blah. Okay? So I've already done that. So if we go over here to channels, we've got that. And the reason why that says, I don't know why that says alpha. That one's not supposed to be even there. I must have done something in one of my demos. But let's get back to how I process this image. Okay, now I took this exposure was 25 seconds, okay, which is almost 30. So 4 times that is about 120 seconds or 2 minutes. Okay, so here is that image. Okay, there's my 2-minute image. Okay, I'll put these side by side. Okay, I'm going to slide this over so you can see it. Nice, huh? Okay, well, wait a minute. Let's go back over to this one and we'll put these little goodies back into it so you can see it. The processing of the sky. So there's my foreground. It's a 2-minute exposure versus that. Actually, it's just a little less than 2 minutes. I think I did 100 seconds because remember the exposure over on the left with the sky was 25 seconds. So the exposure on the right for the foreground was 100 seconds. Okay. Now we're going to take this image's land, click on it, and just drag it on this image. And it creates a land mask for that image. I'll go back to RGB so that you can see both of these images in their layered view. Okay. Now I'm going to highlight this image, the foreground image. I'm going to go to select, load selection, land, hit OK, and you see the marching ants around it. It's selected the foreground. It's not selected the sky, but it's selected the foreground. Okay. I do edit, copy, go over to the left image, do edit, paste, and then take my selection tool, and it puts it right in the middle, and I drag it down until it clicks into place. Okay, right away you can see a problem. Okay, let's go to layers, and I'll shut that off and on. And you can see that we've picked up a little, because the sky is so bright through those leaves on the right-hand foreground image, you've got stuff bleeding through. So that's not going to work, is it? Let's hear it, everybody. No worky.
No worky. No worky. They're all saying it. No worky. That is not working, and it's obviously, people will say it's a composite, like you faked the Milky Way just by seeing that.
Yeah. So it no worky. So we're going to click on it. We're going to take this image, and let me drag this over so you can see it. I'm going to delete that layer. Yes, I want to delete that layer. Goodbye, layer. Sorry, you didn't work.
Trash.
Okay, I'm going to come over here, and we've still got this foreground selected, but we're going to do something now to mitigate the problem. We're going to go to select, modify, and contract. You'll have to experiment, but I've already experimented, and I found that contracting by 10 pixels. Okay, so I contracted the selection down, and then I feathered that selection by 4 pixels. Okay, and then I'm going to go real fast, copy, come over here and paste. Okay, take my selection tool, drag it into place, and we've still got a few things shining through, but not as much as we've had before. A lot better, don't you think?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, so I can go and clean up some of these things. So there we have it, except for a couple last things. I'm going to now flatten this image. So it's now one image, and I'm going to rename it, file, save as. I'm going to call it combo. It's not sky anymore. I'm going to call it combo. Okay. Now, I'm going to shut.
Bill Higgins has typed, worky good.
Working good, huh?
No.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
And while you're pulling that up, I have to give you some props and also some good news. Right now, Alan Hadina and SS Mold have both said they're buying your ebook as soon as we are done here. Thanks for the great examples and explanations.
Oh, good. Okay, so there's our combined flattened image, and I'm going to pull up the original sky image. Okay. And I'm going to put those side by side, arrange. Okay. So there's our original sky image, which had the tent. By the way, I made the illumination in the tent so that it properly gave the right exposure when I got the sky. You know, I could have taken a separate image just for the tent, but I just lowered the illumination in the tent so that it matched my sky exposure. So what I'd like to do now is take this tent and put it over here, this illuminated tent. So I'm going to take my lasso tool, and I'm just going to draw a circle around it. Okay, I wasn't doing a very good job. And I'm going to feather that. I'm just going to give it 16 pixels feather. You would probably want to give it 32 in a bigger image. So I'm going to give it a feather of 16. Don't have to have that, but if there are any mitigating problems, could be. So I'm going to copy that to the clipboard, that selection, copy. And I'm going to go over here to this image on the left, and I'm going to paste. There it is. Okay. And I'm going to go up here. I'm going to drag this over so you can see a little bit better. And I'm going to reduce the opacity to about 40 to 50%. Okay. And then I'm going to drag it over here and try to align it. So in order to align it, I'm going to need to make it bigger. Okay. So I just take my tool and there it's perfectly aligned. Okay. So now I'm going to reduce this down. Okay. So you can see them side by side. Okay. And I'm going to go full 100%. And as you can see, we have this dark background with the tint. It looks just like the image on the right where I've selected it, right? Okay, that's with a standard, look over here to the right, that's with a standard normal blend mode. This is called a mode, a layer mode. If we go down, we click on that and go down here to lighten, that just layers in those things that are about 50% or higher. So everything that's lighter than 50%, it's going to blend in. Watch what happens when we use that mode rather than normal. Did you see that? Look at that.
Boom.
Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Now, I'm going to flatten that again. We don't need that anymore. So I'm going to flatten that. Now, I'm going to get rid of this image. Well, we'll leave it there. Okay, I'm going to do something else on this image. This log right here kind of bothers me because it's almost dividing the foreground. It would be better if this log was kind of diagonal. Don't you agree?
Yeah, it'd be cool if it was coming at the camera.
Yeah. Okay, well, we can do that. Okay, I'm going to go select, excuse me, I got to be on the right image. I'm going to do select all. Come on, select all. And I'm going to go to edit. And I'm going to go to transform warp. Okay. And I'm going to grab the corner of this log and I'm going to drag it down here. Okay. Well, that works fine, but look what it's doing to the tint in the foreground, right? So that's not going to work. So undo that. Okay. I'm showing you all the mistakes so that you'll know how to do this right. So I'm going to take the selection tool, the rectangular selection tool, and I'm going to grab just that area right here. Okay. Voila. Now I'm going to do the same thing. Edit, transform, warp, and I'm going to drag that corner of the log down where I like it. So it's coming towards the camera. Okay. Hit and it didn't do anything to the tint or our skyline, right?
Right.
Hit return. Okay. And I forgot to deselect, but you can see how much more pleasant that composition is. Okay, but I'm going to deselect that marquee. Oh, I did one other problem that I forgot. Let me go back to our history. History.
While Royce is pulling up that history and making changes there, I'm just going to show you guys again. I've gotten a couple questions. This is his Into the Night photography blog, and you can find the link in the email I sent out to you already for Royce's ebook. It's Milky Way Nightscapes ebook. In fact, the first night I ever met Royce, I had just purchased this book. In fact, I think it was the night before, if not 2 nights before, I'd purchased it. And then he showed up in his car and said, "Hey, what are you guys doing tonight?" I'm like, "Oh, we're going to do some Milky Way photography." And are you Royce Bair? I recognized his face. I asked him if it was, and he said yes. He kind of gave me the, I'm a rock star, I know, and he signed my chest. But no, none of that happened. But he did sign my ebook right here, the cover. I had it on my iPad. I took a picture of it and then had him use the Apple Pencil and signed my ebook. And so those aren't available. You can't buy his signature, but you can buy the ebook. And so I would go to this link I sent you and get it ASAP. And there was one request, Royce, if there was a possible way for you to have someone be able to buy it for a friend. Can you buy it and then register the ebook as a gift?
You can. In other words, you can buy the ebook and then contact me, and I'll send them a link.
Okay? Sweet. So you can do it.
Let's go back to the image, and you can see how I've changed that. I'll deselect now. And the problem is I've got this set for about 90% gray on the background here. Can you see how it put in this dark gray right here?
Yeah.
Okay. So, where you, at the top of that image, it distorted that. So all you really need to do, you can use the healing brush if you want. There's all kinds of things that I like using the spot healing brush, because what it's doing is a content aware. Did you know that? That's what it's doing. It's looking at the pixels around it and just cloning what's around it.
Yeah,
so you can see it does a very nice job. Okay, so voila.
All right.
Okay, so there you have it. We're done.
That was fantastic. Go ahead and stop sharing your screen let me keep it on here for a second. Any remaining questions that you guys would like to ask him with these images up that he can point to? I don't want you to kill the screen just yet for that reason, but I can pull up, let's see, unpin Royce so that he is not the only visible dude up here. And then I will make Royce and I visible, as well as, let's see, I can also make this so that the view is above us. Let's go.
My Coke is almost gone, so this discussion can't last very much longer.
That marks the end of the time we have today. His Coke is gone. So if you guys have any questions specific to the pictures, hit us up right now. You really only have 20, 30 seconds after this point of us asking the question. But I got to say, Royce, thank you so much for sharing that information. I have to admit, as much as I love Milky Way photography, as much as I've edited in Photoshop I haven't edited in Photoshop since the 1990s. I did it in my yearbook in junior high. And so I've been playing around with Photoshop forever. I have never wrangled and worked from selections the way that you do. That was a master class in what was like a different language of Photoshop that I had never practiced, never seen. It was really cool to see tonight. I loved that. Mozam says, great show. Terry says, the master at work. Excellent images, Royce. Mary Beth says, just that you both awesome. I don't understand that sentence, Mary Beth. What are you missing? Just that you both... Oh, are. I bet that's an A. Just that you are both awesome is all she's trying to say, I think. And thank you so much.
Aaron definitely is on the awesome part.
I'm on the awesome spectrum, just a little bit below you, Royce, so don't worry. We're both there. I don't think so. And many questions have come in about the actual event and Nightscapers Conference and getting the online option. And so what link would you like me to share for them to get out and capture that? They said, is there a code? Is there anything that I can put up for a code for your Nightscapers Conference online version? Where can they go? What should I recommend to them?
Goody. I'm glad you said something here, because let me bring up some images here while we're waiting, so we have something pretty to look at. So,
Mary Beth
can,
says, laugh out loud. Yes, that's what I was trying to say. She's
so is my screen still showing?
It will be. I am only seeing Photoshop though. So if you're sharing anything else, you'll need to
Oh,
go in and
I'll
show
stop
us.
sharing and then reshare.
Right on. Let's see. IMAX screen. Oh, I got the black. That's what's happening. The black was showing up. So Bob Corson says, looking forward to Kanab. Yes. And SS Mold says, thank you, Sis Mold. And Hudson Johnston says, thank you, Aaron, and thank you, Royce, for the processing gems. Oh, yeah. Fantastic. Barbara Livieri says, just picked up the book. Yes. Thank you for saying thanks to Royce for the time he's spending right now by picking up that book. It really does. It really goes a long way to keep Royce coming back to the guild and these kind of activities with Aaron King because they're worth it and they're fun. You guys have sufficiently given him the fun part. Now it's even extra worth it because you're buying his book. That's fantastic. And who else am I missing? Christopher Miller. Thank you both for the great time and info. You're welcome. And Don Davis. Great presentation. I'll be buying your book. Don says that. Yes. Awesome. So what link did you want to share, Royce? Go ahead and explain what's on your screen.
Oh, well, let me tell you about the Nightscaper conference. If you'll go on my Instagram tomorrow morning, we're having our first ever 2-day sale
Yes.
on the Nightscaper conference. The virtual has been reduced from $5.99 to $3.99 normally with a $200 off code. We're doing a $300 off code tomorrow, and you'll see that on my Instagram, which is Royce Bair Photo. So Royce Bair Photo under Instagram, or go to the Nightscaper Conference on Instagram, and both of those will have the $300 off code, which reduces your price down to $299. It's an awesome deal. And that's only for 48 hours. So Wednesday and Thursday, but don't tell anybody. It actually goes into Saturday because of the international date lines. We had to extend it.
Oh, okay. This
But
is
don't tell anybody.
a secret among us. Only us 62 people here currently right now, and those watching the replay will know. But watching the replay, you might be too late. So make sure you take advantage of that. What is a good link that should give you? Just go to Instagram tomorrow. That's the best place to find. You'll also have some links that'll come from me. So if you just follow me, Royce, get your email from me tomorrow. You'll have other options. Honestly, let me just full disclosure. It's completely coincidence that we got Royce scheduled for tonight. That's also a great timing to go with the sale tomorrow. It's completely unrelated. I'm not sponsored by Royce to do this. Royce had no idea I was going to promote his ebook. I'm just kind of a fanboy, and so I like promoting it. And so none of this is coming to you as a big, planned ploy, clever marketing scheme. This is just me, Aaron King, celebrating Milky Way photography and knowing that Royce has a skill set in the post-processing that I do not have. And that's the way I'm bringing it to the guild and bringing it to those of you who signed up for the 2021 Almanac post-processing session. So it's just coincidence. It times out well with the conference, and Royce's ebook is just something that you all need. If you don't already have it, I'm surprised you don't already have it. And Cheryl says, I'm looking forward to seeing you in Kanab, Royce. Blake Fair says, see you guys.
Is that
in
Cheryl
Kanab.
Kerr?
It is. It is. You know her as
Hi,
well as
Cheryl.
I do. He says hi. Of course, you heard him. So, yes. Blake says, see you guys in Kanab. Bill Higgins, thank you both for tonight's presentation. Very motivating. And those are the comments I caught up. Yes. So then, Royce, the last thing I will ask you before you go. When people are thinking about capturing their shot and they know they're going to do a longer exposure foreground, is there any piece of advice you can give them for how to make sure they frame their shot well? Because we know how often our foreground in the bottom right corner, bottom left corner can have a lot of distracting elements. What do you do to make your shot solid?
The thing that I like to do is review that image once I've got my composition, and then, when you do that longer exposure, you'll be able to see some of the detail come up that allows you to see, ooh, I don't like that in there. So it's important before you lock everything down that you take a longer foreground exposure, just to kind of make sure that you got that composition the way you like it. Because that foreground is at least 1/3 of the image. And, some people are doing 2/3 foreground and 1/3 sky. As you can see on this shot on the screen, I'm doing 1/3 foreground and 2/3 sky. In the beginning, the Milky Way was so awesome that, that's what I wanted to feature.
Right.
But now that I've grown up a little bit, 2/3 foreground sometimes is more interesting to me, especially if it's a cool foreground, than the sky.
And everyone, remember what is around you. Remember what's in your frame, and don't skip on that step of just seeing what it looks like on your back of your screen. Capture it really long, see it. And, Royce said this to me once, and I nodded my head diligently, and like I was a good listener and a good learner. And yet, Royce, I still managed to go many times without doing it. And I was reminded of it by Mary Beth Kaczynski out at the Cape. We were out on Cape Kiwanda in Oregon, on the Oregon coast. And here's the piece of advice he gave me. He said, when you're here, always just capture a long exposure because you might need it. Just capture a long exposure. You always might need it. And I'm like, yeah, I will. And then I go and don't do it all the time. In the situation with Mary Beth out there with our group, we did a Photog Adventures listener adventure out there, and she captured a nice long exposure of the rocks underneath us leading up to the Milky Way that was coming around Haystack Rock. And I only captured my single image shots of the rock. I did a time lapse, and I kept my composition right there and didn't take any longer exposures of the rocks underneath. In her image, since she had a longer exposure of the rocks, she got a beautiful composition together. In my image, I had the same sky, but my foreground was lacking compared to what she had. And so just always remember Royce's advice. Capture a long exposure no matter where you are. Don't forget it, because you can't come back later, and if you don't use it, it costs you nothing.
Yeah, and do do a lot of stacking is the poor man's answer to a tracker.
Yeah.
And if you're doing time lapse, you're getting a whole bunch of stacked images anyway. And one thing that comes off cool from time lapse is that occasionally you're going to get a shooting star in your picture, and you have a much greater chance of doing that with a time lapse.
You're going to have a chance to get some cool stuff that you never knew. Thomas Heaton, you might be heard of him as a photographer watching YouTube. He's only famous thanks to, well, okay, I say this better. His initiation of becoming more well-known was because he was there one night and happened to have his camera open during a crazy fire or fall of a meteorite that came through in a dark sky location in England. And that image put him on the news locally. And so that kind of stuff happens. So keep your camera open when you can.
As you gain more experience, you'll want to go to tracking because the detail that you can get in the sky and the noise reduction is just awesome. In fact, you can use a cheap $100 lens with tracking that'll just blow you away. But the other thing that you'll want to do is combine tracking with stacking, so you get the depth, the tonal depth, and the nebulosity all combined together, and it becomes pretty awesome. But don't forget to shoot lots of pictures before you move that tripod.
Yes, amen. And you're going to get tons of more information and all the specifics of the things he went through there in a summary, all from the Nightscaper conference. So don't forget to join us there. Christian says, just downloaded the ebook. Looking forward to reading it soon. I'm going to hold you to that, Christian, when we're hanging out for the next primer for April coming up. I'm going to be hanging out with Christian to get on a live stream, and I'll ask him, hey, Christian, did you read more than 75% of it? And I hope he says yes. Thanks again,
You'll notice
Royce.
in that ebook that that ebook was done quite a few years ago, and you'll notice my post-processing is really to the blue side. And this image right in front of you is about 5 years old, so it's towards the blue side. My images are a lot warmer now, quite a bit more naturalness on the Milky Way. So this is not how I process my images nowadays. But the cool thing about RAW is you can always go back. And the cool thing about keeping your layers is just a few clicks, you can change that, because you've already got the mask made.
Oh, yeah.
And the curves, you just need to make some slight color adjustments.
Just don't lose your RAWs. Don't have a hard drive crash, and then you're good.
Yes, we won't go into that.
No, too
There,
much
there,
misery.
there are really only two people in this world: those that have lost their data and those that are going to lose their data.
That's a good one. I should put that on a t-shirt. Royce Bair, there's two people in this world, those who have lost their data and who are going to lose their data. Fred says, looking forward to the Nightscaper conference and Aaron's workshops. Oh, thanks, Fred. I'm stoked. I'll have him down there in Escalante, so Fred and I will be hanging out. Can anyone say Roger? Yeah, Mary Beth already brought up Roger Clark, and then Kirk said that next. Can anyone say Roger? Roger Clark is someone who will murder you in your sleep if you have too much blue in your images. But he's a good guy. He's a good guy.
He is, and he's got a lot of technical knowledge.
Yeah, killer technical knowledge. It'll just blow you out of the water. Barb Livieri says, I can attest to getting a shooting star while doing a Milky Way time lapse. Never saw it until I played the video movie and left to right through the Milky Way. That's awesome. So thank you guys. Thank you, Royce. Again, say thanks to Royce by joining the Nightscaper conference, getting his ebook. Those are awesome ways to say thank you. And you know what? I got to say goodnight. Let Royce go enjoy, I don't know, another dinner, a sleep, whatever you want to do now. It's 8 o'clock here in Utah. It's time for most of you to get some sleep as well. Thanks for joining us tonight. If you want to be a part of more, just come join us, MilkyWayPhotographersGuild.com. We have a lot of fun there and a lot more coming this year. So fantastic. Thank you again, Royce. I can't say it enough.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be on here with you, Aaron.
Oh, it was fantastic. I miss it, and we're going to do it a lot more in just a couple months away. Just what is it, 2 months away tomorrow, huh? That's what it's all about.
2 months tomorrow.
Yes. Awesome.
If you're wise, you'll check in 2 months from today.
Yeah. See how things are going. Thanks again, guys. I'm going to turn off the live stream and say goodbye to Royce off the screen. Hudson says, until next time. Mary Beth says, thank you. Kurt Kai says, thank you, Royce. Terry says, see you in Kanab. Everyone's excited. Dave Jones says, thanks. Looking forward to reading the book. And everyone's just saying thanks. Pulling in lots of love, Royce. So thank you, guys. Have a good night. We're going to end it. See you later. Oh, there's
Thanks
Royce.
for all your questions.
Absolutely. Go ahead and rave by again because I had it on a different screen at that moment. So see you guys. Have a good one.